The intro of a game is very important, just as the beginning of any good story is important. A good intro should serve as a way to hook the player in order to see them through to the end of the game. So in this video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the top 10 game intros of all time. So kicking this list off, we got the original Bioshock, and what can I say? It's a classic for a reason, but the game starts out with you in the back of an airplane, minding your own business, smoking a cigarette, when out of nowhere, this plane's going down, it's crashing in the ocean, things aren't looking good. But as fate would have it, you survive the crash, and as you're swimming through the wreckage of your crashed plane, you notice nearby an ominous moonlit lighthouse. So, yeah, we're going in. And once you're inside, you go into what you think is an elevator, but instead of taking you up, it takes you down, all the way down to the bottom of the ocean where the beautiful underwater city of Rapture is revealed to the player. And I love that you just go from plane crash survivor, just kind of looking for a phone, to a person that's completely enthralled in the mystery of the city of Rapture, what's going on here, and what you can do to help. And things pretty quickly turn to horror as you see a guy just get gut in front of you by a splicer. So yeah, pretty memorable intro. So moving right along, the next game is The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. I love this game's intro, and no, I'm not talking about the goofy beginning in the sewers, but actually the moment you step out of the sewers, as it's the first game I remember playing where if I could see something, I could walk there. Like these ruins, I'm gonna go over there, I'm gonna kick everybody's ass, and once I do that, I'm gonna go to the top of that mountain and kick everybody's ass over there. And I basically did that until the game was over. But I guess you could argue that Skyrim and even Morrowind had this as well, but I played Oblivion before Skyrim, so it was very new and fresh in this game, and in Morrowind, you don't really have the if I can see it, I can go there aspect, as you can only see like 50 feet because of the fog. But yeah, those early moments of unparalleled freedom that I felt in Oblivion were completely new and fresh to me, and that's why it made it on the list. So at number 8, we have Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, and I love this game's intro because your character Talion wakes up in the Wraith world with no explanation for why he's here, but over the course of the intro, we learn not only why your character is dead, but the game's intro also teaches you how to play the game through a series of flashbacks. But what I mean by that is that most games would teach you the basics of combat by simply having you engage in combat with the enemies of the game. But what Shadow of Mordor does is teaches you the basics of combat as you spar with your son. Take the stealth tutorial for example, whereas instead of sneaking up on orcs and teaching you how to stab them in the back, the game teaches you stealth by having you sneak up on your wife and giving her a bouquet of flowers. This makes for a very memorable opening to the game, as the seeds of revenge are planted in the very tutorial that will carry you through the rest of the game. And moving on to number 7, we have Halo Combat Evolved, and in my opinion, one of the greatest intros in gaming, because you gotta remember, in 2001, first-person shooters were just corridor shooters, and though Halo CE kind of starts out like that, as you're navigating the halls and the corridors of the Pillar of Autumn, in my opinion, the true intro to the game is when you crash land on Halo in the second level, where you're introduced to this huge open section of Halo, where you can go from indoor environments to outdoor environments without a loading screen. That was huge back in the day. Not to mention there are vehicles on the map that you can freely drive with a friend and co-op, which was absolutely mind-blowing. And on top of that, you can complete the objectives in any order you see fit as you save the different groups of Marines. But at the end of the day, Halo Combat Evolved's approach to open sandbox level design revolutionized first-person shooters overnight, and that's why it makes the list. And at number 6, we have Fallout 4, and what makes Fallout 4's intro so memorable over other Fallout games is that they usually start during the apocalypse, whereas in Fallout 4, it actually starts before the bombs fall. You're hanging out at home with your wife or husband, playing with the baby, there's even a cool robot washing dishes in the kitchen, which is pretty cool, and slowly, as you're just kind of chilling on the couch watching TV, stuff starts to go not so good. The citizens of your neighborhood are asked to evacuate their homes as you make a mad dash towards the vault, but what's really cool is you actually witness with your own eyes the atomic bomb that creates the apocalyptic landscape that the game takes place in. And that's what I love about Fallout 4's intro. It showed us something that we hadn't seen before, and it kind of made me hope in future Fallout games we get to witness the chaos of the bombs dropping in the past before fast forwarding to the future where we get to live in the apocalypse. And at number 5, we have Red Dead Redemption 2, and of course one of the greatest games of all time, has one of the most memorable intros of all time, because it doesn't matter how far you make it into the open world of Red Dead Redemption 2, whether you beat the game or you're still stuck at Valentine, everybody remembers the hardships of the intro being stuck on the snowy mountain in this game. The horrific themes of the dreadful cold and snow are really hammered home in this intro, as your characters struggle to find shelter, warmth, and food just to survive, and even some of the characters don't survive, which hammers home the loss that these characters are feeling. And not to mention that even all these years later, that these are some of the most impressive looking snow physics we've ever seen in a game. And it doesn't matter, it could be summer outside in real life, and playing through this section of the game makes me cold. And it doesn't matter how far away from this mountain you get. As things get warmer, you'll never forget the hardships and struggles that your characters felt in this game's intro. And at number 4, we have Batman Arkham City, and what makes this game's intro so memorable to me is that unlike the other Arkham games, you don't start out as Batman in the Batsuit, but actually as Bruce Wayne getting incarcerated and thrown into Arkham City. This completely changes the way the characters of the world interact with you, and I just love going through the steps of getting captured, getting into a fight, busting out of my handcuffs where I really start kicking ass, socking one to Penguin, climbing up to the roof where I can contact Alfred to have him drop off the Batsuit, and it's then, once you get your Batsuit on, the game transforms into a truly open world Arkham game for the first time. As I love the gameplay starts out pretty linear as it did in Arkham Asylum, but only once you get your Batsuit on does the game transform into an open world, which makes this intro completely unforgettable. And at number 3, we have the survival game, Subnautica. And what I love about this game's intro is it doesn't tell you anything. You're in a spaceship, it's going down, you climb into the escape pod, and you crash onto an alien world. And what I love about this game's gameplay is it's completely reactive. You're in an escape pod that's on fire after you crash, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to grab this fire extinguisher and put out the fire. Okay, the fire's out. I'm going to climb out and see what my surroundings are, and it turns out you're on a desolate alien ocean planet with very little chances of survival. So, what are you going to do next? As I said, the gameplay is very reactive, so I choose to go inside the escape pod to try to fix my radio so I could call for help, as someone would, or maybe you prioritize trying to find a way to swim to the crashed ship to improve your chances of survival. The game does a great job at making you feel like, what would you do in this situation? But it's only once you dive into the water that you realize that this is the game world that the game wants you to play in. And shows that the key of survival isn't finding a way to stay out of the water, but finding a way to tame this environment around you, which makes this intro very memorable. And at number 2, we have Battlefield 1, one of my favorite intros of any game ever. And it's just haunting that the game starts out by saying, this is frontline combat. You probably ain't gonna make it. And it's the moment the gameplay actually starts that you realize there's wounded soldiers covered in mud everywhere, World War I style tanks ripping through the environment, and just an overall sense of dread over the battle itself that you realize this is a different kind of Battlefield game. But as combat begins, you and your allies are barely holding the line until eventually your character is killed, revealing the name, the date of birth, and death of this character, and just when you think it's over, the game transfers you across this battlefield hellscape to another soldier on the same battlefield and shows their struggles to survive as well. The combat here is muddy and grimy with bayonets, landships, and airships in the sky until eventually you're transferred to the gunner seat of a tank as it rips through a cemetery as you see the wounded and dead are being carried out by their allies. It's a haunting intro to a game. As new technologies of the time are introduced, such as gas masks, as you lead a bayonet charge into the enemy where there's landships tearing through the environment, it's a dirty fight until eventually your character is taken down, triggering the ending cinematic. Battlefield 1's intro is one of the most visceral and haunting intros to a game I've ever played, and that's why I won't be forgetting it. And here we are at number 1, we have the intro of The Last of Us, and if you haven't played it before, let's just say it's pretty rough. The game starts out with you playing as the protagonist's daughter, Sarah, as you wander the house wondering what's going on, and according to the news, things aren't looking good. But eventually your father gets home, and you can tell as he loads a gun, he's a little worried, as he guns down the first infected you see, and you evacuate the house with your dad and your Uncle Tommy. But what makes this intro so unique is that you are playing as a powerless child. Your guardians are making all the choices for you, and you are just witnessing the world fall apart. And as the situation gets worse and worse, you're eventually in a car crash where the game transitions to you controlling the protagonist, whereas instead of being a powerless child, you are now in the role of the protector, and now the responsibilities fall on you, which actually adds a sense of dread, as you, the player, are now responsible for this child's safety as opposed to being the helpless child. And without spoiling how the intro ends, it's pretty rough, but it also sets up your character's motivations that carries him throughout the rest of the story, which is the tell of any introduction of any great game or story.
Look at me, baby.
Well guys, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching this video on my top 10 game intros of all time. And even though these are my top 10 game intros, I don't really necessarily have them in order, as the order could change on any given day depending on how I feel. But guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to drop a like on it. It helps the little video reach new fans, and as I always say, that's always a good thing. I also make cool new videos like the one you're watching right now every single week, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future content. But guys, that's all I have, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.